Have you ever poured your heart into someone only to feel like it disappeared into a void? Have you ever reached out, asked for an explanation, or simply wanted an apology and received nothing but silence? That sting you feel, the emptiness, the confusion, is not just disappointment, it's the quiet echo of being undervalued, of being pushed aside. And yes, it hurts more than words can ever capture. But what if I told you that this pain, as heavy as it feels right now, carries a hidden power, a power that can shift the balance, not by forcing someone to face you, but by awakening something inside them they've been hiding from themselves. By staying with this video until the end, you'll discover the key to making an avoidant person acknowledge the hurt they caused. You'll learn not just a method to receive an apology, but a way to reclaim your own strength, your own dignity, and your sense of control. And that is a reward worth holding on to. The truth is, when someone avoids responsibility for the pain they've caused, it's rarely about you. It's about them. Their fear of intimacy, their fear of vulnerability, the discomfort of facing their own mistakes, these are the chains that hold them back. Every withdrawal, every cold shoulder, every silent treatment is not a reflection of your worth, but a mirror of their internal struggle. And here's something most people never realize. The more you chase, the more you beg, the more you try to force acknowledgement, the more they retreat. Human psychology is fascinating in this way. Avoidant personalities are wired to push when they feel pressure and to hide when they feel exposed. They act out of a deep-seated fear of closeness, of being seen too clearly, of being accountable for the mess they leave behind. And while that can feel infuriating, it also holds the secret you need, because once you understand this pattern, you stop reacting from pain and start acting from strategy. And strategy in this context is not manipulation. It's a profound psychological principle that transforms your power in the relationship, the power of self-possession. Imagine for a moment what it feels like to be untouchable. Not in a cold or heartless way, but in a way that radiates clarity and confidence. When you stop seeking their recognition, stop pushing for validation, and stop feeding into the cycle of hurt, you begin to create space. Space for reflection, space for them to see the truth of their actions without your constant urging. Human behavior is reactive to absence as much as presence. People notice what they've lost more acutely than what they have, and avoidants are no exception. This is why staying grounded in your self-worth is not just advice. It is strategy rooted in human psychology. When you maintain your boundaries, when you honor your feelings without compromise, you stop giving them the fuel to continue their patterns. Their discomfort grows, not because you're mean, but because you no longer serve as the safety net they relied on to escape accountability. And that discomfort is the precursor to reflection. It is the moment where the possibility of an apology is born, not from coercion, but from realization. When they finally feel the weight of the absence they created, when they recognize the void left behind by their avoidance, they will come face to face with their own actions. And that's when acknowledgement becomes possible. But here's something even more important. This journey isn't just about them apologizing. It's about you reclaiming your emotional sovereignty. Too often, people define their happiness and sense of worth through the reactions of others. They hope for closure from someone who may not even be capable of giving it. And that's why it hurts so much. True power lies in turning inward, in building a fortress of self-respect, resilience, and calm determination. In knowing that whether they apologize or not, your value is intact and your peace is untouchable. That is the real reward that comes from understanding the dynamics of avoidance and learning to navigate them wisely. By watching this video until the end, you will gain a map for that journey. You'll discover how to step into a space of quiet strength that triggers recognition, reflection, and ultimately apology in a person who once hurt you. You'll understand the subtle, almost invisible ways human psychology works in these situations. You'll learn how to stop reacting from desperation and start responding with power. And as you take in these lessons, you'll feel a shift inside yourself, a growing confidence, a rising calm, and a sense of certainty that you can't be shaken by their avoidance anymore. So if you felt abandoned, ignored, or mistreated, hold on to that feeling for a moment. Let it fuel you, not weigh you down. Recognize that this pain is also a signpost, a marker that you've been giving too much without protection, that your energy and care were not matched. And now, there is a way to change the dynamic. There is a path forward where your dignity remains intact, your self-respect grows, and the person who hurt you can finally face what they've done. The steps you'll learn are not magic, but they are powerful. They are rooted in human behavior, in the natural laws of attention, reflection, and consequence. And if you stay with this video, you will have the tools to claim the apology you deserve, or more importantly, the closure and empowerment that belongs to you. Because here's the reality. Nothing in life is more motivating than seeing someone finally recognize the truth of their actions. But nothing is more liberating than discovering that you never needed their acknowledgement to validate your worth in the first place. Now that you understand the hidden power within your pain, let's take a deeper look at the person who hurt you. The avoidant. Understanding them is not about excusing their behavior. It's about seeing clearly how their mind works. Avoidant individuals are driven by fear, not malice. They fear exposure, vulnerability, and the intensity of genuine emotional connection. They act as though your feelings are too much for them to handle. Every time they pull away, it's not necessarily because they don't care, but because facing accountability feels overwhelming. And when someone avoids confrontation, it's almost impossible to get a straightforward apology by demanding one. That's why the traditional ways of seeking closure, arguments, pleading, or constant reminders, fail time and again. Psychology shows that people respond far more to absence than to pressure. When an avoidant senses that you are no longer available to rescue them from their discomfort, they begin to notice what they are missing. Your patience, your presence, and your care are powerful tools when wielded correctly. Stepping back does not mean abandoning your emotions. It means creating the conditions where reflection becomes inevitable. By holding yourself steady, you allow them to feel the weight of the space you occupy in their life. It is in that absence, that quiet tension, where recognition begins. And recognition is the seed of genuine remorse. Most people fail because they underestimate the importance of emotional independence. They continue to chase, to text, to explain, to justify themselves, hoping the avoidant will finally see the truth. But truth, when forced, loses its power. Human beings need room to process and to feel the consequences of their actions. Your value becomes most visible, not when you fight to be seen, but when you stand firmly in your integrity. It's the consistency of your self-respect that disrupts their patterns. It's the calm refusal to engage in reactive behavior that creates the mirror they cannot ignore. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is strategy. When you stop seeking validation, you stop giving them the opportunity to avoid responsibility. You stop giving them the excuse to escape reflection. In that silence, they begin to face the tension they have long avoided. That tension is uncomfortable, yes, but it is also the first step toward awareness. Awareness opens the door to accountability, and accountability is what leads to apologies that are meaningful, not superficial. While it may seem counterintuitive, allowing space and maintaining boundaries is not a passive act. It is a demonstration of strength. Strength draws attention, and attention awakens conscience. They may try to distract themselves, rationalize their actions, or even ignore the discomfort, but the longer your peace remains unshaken, the more impossible it becomes for them to continue avoiding the truth. Human behavior, by nature, seeks resolution. When a problem is left unresolved, tension grows until action becomes unavoidable. This is the natural law that works in your favor when applied with patience and self-respect. It is also crucial to understand that this process is not about manipulation. It is about natural cause and effect. You are not creating guilt artificially. You are simply allowing the consequences of avoidance to exist. By holding yourself steady, you illuminate the contrast between your integrity and their avoidance. That contrast triggers self-reflection. When they begin to feel the weight of their actions and the loss of your presence, the apology they offer will not be scripted or forced. It will be a true acknowledgement of the pain they caused. And that acknowledgement, coming from self-realization rather than pressure, is far more powerful than any apology gained through confrontation. At the same time, this method strengthens your inner world. It cultivates resilience, self-worth, and emotional autonomy. You begin to realize that your peace does not depend on their recognition. You begin to feel a confidence that is not fragile or conditional. This transformation is essential because it not only prepares the path for their acknowledgement, but also ensures that your happiness is independent. When they apologize, it becomes a bonus, not a necessity. When they fail to apologize, your life continues with clarity, purpose, and strength. This is the true empowerment that arises from understanding the psychology of avoidance. Another critical factor is patience. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active presence within yourself. It is the discipline of knowing that timing matters, that human consciousness requires space, and that forcing confrontation only prolongs resistance. Avoidants are wired to resist pressure, and every attempt to accelerate their awareness only strengthens their walls. Your patience, however, softens those walls without confrontation. It shows that your boundaries are firm, your worth is unwavering, and your attention is no longer up for grabs. In response, they must face themselves, or continue living with the tension of absence. Finally, as you navigate this process, remember that this is not revenge. It is not about making them feel bad or punishing them. It is about creating the conditions for truth to emerge naturally. When someone realizes what they've lost, when they finally see the consequences of their avoidance, a sincere apology becomes almost inevitable. And the beauty of this method is that it works not because you control them, but because you control yourself. Your calm, your strength, and your emotional clarity are the catalysts that spark the awakening. So hold on to your power. Do not chase, do not beg, do not over-explain. Stand firm in your self-respect and in the knowledge that your value is independent of their actions. Understand the patterns of avoidance. Trust that your patience, your boundaries, and your emotional independence will create the conditions where reflection, remorse, and acknowledgement naturally arise. By the end of this journey, you will not only increase the likelihood of a meaningful apology, but you will also become stronger, more grounded, and more in command of your own emotional world than you ever imagined possible. Once you have embraced patience and emotional independence, the next step is learning the art of subtle influence. Influence does not mean control. It does not mean manipulation or games. It is the quiet, natural way your presence or absence affects someone's mind. Avoidant individuals are extremely sensitive to patterns. They notice shifts in energy, boundaries, and attention. Every time you hold yourself steady, refuse to react out of hurt, and maintain your calm, it sends a message without a single word. It is a message that says, I am whole, I am valued, I am not dependent on your recognition. This quiet certainty is magnetic, and it is exactly what triggers the self-reflection they have been avoiding. The challenge is resisting the temptation to fill every silence, to explain every misunderstanding, or to justify your worth. Doing so keeps them comfortable because it provides an escape. Your explanations, no matter how truthful or heartfelt, often act as a cushion that prevents them from facing the consequences of their avoidance. When you remove that cushion, you create a space where reality sinks in. They start to notice the impact of their absence, the weight of the distance they have created, and the value of the presence they once took for granted. This is the subtle power of emotional independence. It forces reflection without confrontation. At the same time, cultivating this quiet influence strengthens your inner self. It trains you to respond instead of react, to act from clarity rather than from emotion. Every time you choose restraint over impulsive messaging, every time you honor your boundaries instead of seeking validation, you reinforce your own stability. This stability is attractive in the purest sense because it mirrors the truth. You are not driven by fear, need, or insecurity. You operate from a place of strength, and the human mind, even that of an avoidant, is naturally drawn to what it cannot control. They begin to realize that their actions have consequences, and that the person they once could avoid is no longer easily shaken. It is important to remember that reflection is not immediate. Human psychology works in layers. At first, they may react with confusion, defensiveness, or even attempts to re-establish old patterns. They may test your boundaries or subtly try to provoke a response. This is normal. Their resistance is a sign that your presence or absence is effective. When you remain calm, composed, and consistent, the tension between their discomfort and your stability begins to produce insight. Insight leads to acknowledgement. Acknowledgement leads to understanding. And understanding opens the door to genuine apology. Each step builds naturally from the previous one, and each step is powered by your emotional independence. Another crucial element in this process is self-observation. While waiting for them to reflect, you must also reflect on yourself. Monitor your feelings. Notice when old habits of chasing or explaining arise, and consciously choose a different response. This awareness prevents frustration from sabotaging your progress. It also reinforces the habit of self-reliance. The more grounded you become in your own experience, the more powerful your influence grows. Emotional independence is not just about withholding your attention, it is about cultivating a mindset that cannot be shaken by the unpredictability of someone else's behavior. During this time, it is natural to feel moments of doubt. You may question whether your approach is working, whether they will ever acknowledge the hurt, or whether your patience is in vain. These doubts are part of the process, and they can be transformed into fuel for strength. Remind yourself that true change in another person cannot be rushed or forced. You are not responsible for their willingness to face the truth. What you are responsible for is your own presence, your own calm, and your own consistency. That is where your real power lies, and it is exactly what shapes the conditions for them to come forward with honesty. It is also important to recognize the subtle signs of awareness when they begin to feel the consequences of their avoidance. They may start small, lingering glances, hesitant messages, or moments of acknowledgement in conversation. These signs, while easily overlooked, indicate that reflection is happening. Each moment is a confirmation that your approach is effective. Rather than jumping to interpretation or reacting emotionally, maintain your composure. Allow the natural progression of awareness to unfold. The longer you maintain this quiet strength, the more likely they are to reach a genuine point of apology on their own. At its core, this method is rooted in the principle of non-reactive influence. When someone feels the impact of their behavior without external pressure, they engage with it internally. They think, feel, and eventually realize. And avoidants, in particular, respond to indirect but consistent signals that something has changed. Your unwavering boundaries, your refusal to over-explain, and your dedication to your own well-being all communicate a powerful truth. Their avoidance can no longer dictate your peace. This truth resonates deeply, triggering a process of self-examination that words alone cannot achieve. Finally, remember that this process transforms you as much as it affects them. It builds resilience, self-assurance, and clarity. You learn to value your presence, your feelings, and your integrity above the reactions of others. You discover that the path to a meaningful apology is not through chasing, arguing, or convincing, it is through becoming unshakable. And when they finally recognize the hurt they caused, when their awareness is fully awakened, the acknowledgement they offer is authentic, not forced. That authenticity carries far more weight than any apology gained through pressure or manipulation. This step is about quiet mastery over your emotional world. It is about shaping the environment for self-reflection while strengthening your own foundation. It is about trust in yourself, trust in the natural consequences of human behavior, and trust that genuine acknowledgement, when it occurs, is worth far more than any instant gratification. By embracing this approach, you are not just increasing the likelihood of an apology, you are reclaiming your power, protecting your peace, and cultivating the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing your worth. Now that you understand the power of influence and emotional independence, it is time to focus on a principle even more crucial: creating genuine awareness. Awareness is not simply noticing your absence. It is about triggering a deep internal reflection in someone who has avoided responsibility for their actions. Avoidant people rarely think about the consequences of their behavior unless something in their environment forces them to pause and reflect. That pause does not happen through pressure or confrontation. It happens through presence, absence, and consistency. By maintaining boundaries and remaining centered, you begin to show them the full picture of what their avoidance has cost, not in anger or blame, but in quiet, undeniable reality. This process works because human psychology naturally seeks balance. When someone realizes that their actions have caused harm and that harm has real consequences, their mind cannot ignore it forever. The avoidant may initially resist the discomfort, try to rationalize, or even pretend it does not exist. That is expected. Resistance is a sign that reflection is occurring on a deeper level. Each moment of tension between their avoidance and your stability becomes a mirror they cannot escape. The longer this tension exists, the more unavoidable their self-reflection becomes. And self-reflection is the first step toward acknowledgement, remorse, and ultimately apology. Understanding this principle requires patience and strategic restraint. It is easy to feel the urge to fill the silence, to justify your feelings, or to demand recognition. These reactions, however natural, serve to protect their avoidance rather than challenge it. Every explanation, every attempt to make them see your side, acts as a cushion, allowing them to remain comfortable and unaccountable. By choosing to remain steady, calm, and composed, you remove that cushion. You show them that your value is independent of their actions, and in doing so, you plant the seed for authentic acknowledgement. This is a subtle psychological leverage that works because it respects both your boundaries and their need to self-process. One of the most powerful aspects of this approach is that it creates change without forcing confrontation. Avoidant personalities are deeply uncomfortable with direct emotional exposure. Pressuring them often triggers further withdrawal, whereas creating conditions for self-awareness allows them to confront themselves voluntarily. Every moment you maintain your calm and protect your peace. You send a silent message. I am not dependent on your approval. I am grounded in my own worth. That message, repeated over time through consistent behavior, begins to break down the mental walls they have built. It is the quiet but relentless pressure of integrity that awakens insight. Another essential element is self-mastery. While the avoidant is processing their own patterns, you must continue to strengthen your emotional resilience. Monitor your reactions carefully. Notice when old habits of seeking reassurance or over-explaining surface and choose a different response. This is not about suppression, but about conscious self-regulation. By staying aligned with your principles, you create an environment where their self-reflection is uninterrupted by emotional chaos or desperation. The more consistent and composed you remain, the more powerful your influence becomes. It is also important to recognize that small shifts in their behavior are significant. They may begin with subtle gestures, small acknowledgments, tentative communication, or hints of recognition. These signals are often overlooked because they are minor, but in reality, they indicate that your approach is working. Avoidants rarely change overnight. Transformation is incremental. Each small sign of reflection is a confirmation that your boundaries and emotional strength are producing real effects. By observing without overreacting, you allow the process to unfold naturally, giving them the space to reach a genuine apology on their own timeline. This stage also teaches a vital lesson about patience and trust. You must trust the process, trust your own strength, and trust that change occurs most effectively when it is internally motivated rather than externally forced. Patience is not inactivity. It is an active, conscious decision to maintain your integrity while letting consequences of avoidance manifest. The moment an avoidant begins to understand the impact of their actions, a genuine apology becomes possible. That apology carries far more value than one coerced by confrontation, because it is born from awareness, not obligation. In addition, this process cultivates a profound internal transformation for you. As you hold your boundaries, remain composed, and practice restraint, you reinforce your own sense of self-worth. You learn to value your own peace over the need for immediate recognition. You begin to understand that your happiness and stability do not depend on another person's acknowledgement. This internal strength not only prepares the ground for their apology, but also ensures that, regardless of their response, your life continues with clarity, focus, and confidence. Finally, the real power of this stage lies in combining awareness creation with self-possession. By consistently demonstrating your strength, emotional stability, and independence, you create a natural mirror for the avoidant. They see the reality of what they have caused and are compelled to confront it internally. This confrontation leads to remorse and genuine acknowledgement, not because of manipulation or guilt, but because the truth of their actions becomes undeniable. And when the apology finally arrives, it carries authenticity, depth, and meaning that cannot be manufactured or forced. This approach also reveals a deeper truth about relationships and human behavior. The person who hurt you cannot control your growth, your dignity, or your emotional sovereignty. By focusing on your own stability and self-respect, you shift the balance of power without aggression. You allow natural consequences to unfold, giving them the opportunity to face themselves. At the same time, you emerge stronger, wiser, and more self-aware, fully capable of receiving an apology that is genuine, or moving forward with complete confidence if it never comes.